was one of the women that was not really sure I wanted to pay that cost. Maybe you guys have been in that same situation where I waited. I watched the culture wars rage for quite a while, but I thought, I don't want to say anything. I know what these people will do to you, if they can, because they will, right? They'll try to threaten your jobs. They'll try to get between you and your family. They will try to wreck your relationships. And I have found, as the wife of a pastor for 25 years now, that people tend to fall on one of two sides of the spectrum. Either you're the natural truth teller or you're the natural grace giver, right? And some of you guys, you're like, you want to keep the peace and you just want to make sure everyone's okay. And then the rest of you are like, no, I'm just going to say it like it is, and they're going to have to deal with it, right? Raise your hand if you're a grace giver. Truth tellers, be honest. See, look at that. The truth, that's me, okay? So you might think, well, Katie's a truth teller because here she is triggering people on every subject you can trigger somebody on. But I'm not. I'm a grace giver. I would much rather keep my friends. So the only reason I'm in the middle of this cultural fight right now is because it became very clear to me that children were being victimized. And that was really the only thing that I realized I'm actually willing to lose friendships over this. Because we had worked in ministry, we had done youth ministry for decades, and the kids who experienced the most pain, the ones that were dealing with the most issues, very often had something in common, and that was family breakdown. That was the loss of their mother or father. That was the thing that the junior high wanted to stay up and talk about in the middle of the all-nighter. Where is my father? Why did he leave? Does he love me? Does he miss me? And so when I saw, especially during the marriage debate, that the other side was saying things like kids don't care if they have two moms or two dads. Functionally, what that means is kids don't care if they've lost their mom or dad. And that, to me, is weaponizing one of the greatest wounds that children can experience to advance a political aim. So that's why I got into this, really because I knew that the stakes to kids were so high. So I started Them Before Us, a global movement to defend children's rights to their mother and father. And what that means is we understand that marriage is not something that can change. Marriage, properly defined as the union, lifelong union between one man, one woman, is actually a matter of justice for children. Because it is the only relationship that unites the two people to whom children have a natural right. But then once I started talking about marriage and why marriage was a critical issue of justice for children, I realized when you're looking at the culture war, it seems that we are victimizing children everywhere. There's hardly a place you can look in our culture today where we are not putting kids last. So we created a new project at Them Before Us, a book called Pro-Child Politics. Not pro-choice politics, pro-child politics. That came out last week. And what we do in that book is we say, actually, every major political issue, economic, cultural, national, is a matter of justice for children. And we work to get it out before the election. Why? Because I actually think that should be your metric for how you vote and who you vote for. I think that you should be pro-child in the way that you vote. And I want to talk specifically about four areas of child protection that I think you need to prioritize when you go into the voting booth or when you mail in one of your 3 ballots. Just kidding. We're not Democrats. We only get one. Life, family, mind, and body. Life, family, mind, and body. I actually think that you can summarize the entire culture war down to protecting children's life, family, mind, and body. So let's just take a look at some of the issues that we are considering as it relates to protecting children's life, family, mind, and body in this election. So it's no surprise to you. You guys are veterans when it comes to protecting children's life. How many of you guys have been in the fight for children's right to life for more than 10 years? Raise your hand. How many of you have been fighting for more than 20? 30? Yep. Very good. How many of you guys have been doing it for 40 years? We've got the saints in the back. Thank you so much. So this is, yeah. this is not new to the right. We understand children's fundamental right to life. That is and continues to be one of the most primary issues that needs to drive a child protection vote. Who is protecting children's life from the abortion industry, which last year, including all of the chemical abortions, was around 1 million, is that right? Yep, 1 million children in 2023 that lost their life to abortion. So we need to critique abortion, we need to oppose abortion, we need to fight against abortion, we need to support politicians who are committed to children's right to life. But I'll tell you something else. Children's right to life is being victimized not just by the abortion industry, but by the big fertility industry. Now, I know this might be uncomfortable for some of you, but IVF, in vitro fertilization, the process of making babies in a laboratory in vitro in glass, actually destroys more embryonic life every year than Planned Parenthood. Right now, the way that fertility clinics operate is to make many more embryos than anybody would ever intend to implant or parent. About 3 to 7% of the babies created in the laboratory will be born alive. 93 to 97% are going to be donated to medical waste, donated to research, spend their entire lives in a freezer, or simply won't make it through the process. What is that process? They're screened out for genetic abnormalities. We decide who lives and who dies, who's implanted, who's frozen, based on grading them, A, B, C, and D. We decide the boys should live and the girls should die. There's one clinic in California that caters to high-end, wealthy couples, 90% of whom don't have any fertility problems. They just want to customize their child. They want to make babies in a laboratory so they can decide which of those 20 embryos, which of the 2 of the 20 embryos they want to implant and raise. And the other 18, don't need them. So when it comes to defending children's right to life, how should we vote? We need to vote for candidates and policies that protect children's life from both the baby-taking industry and the baby-making industry. That's a non-negotiable. Children's family is under attack, primarily children's right to their mother and father. And while there are incredible, heroic step-parents, many of whom are probably in this room right now, when you look demographically, when you look overall, children are most likely to be safe and loved when they are raised by their married biological mother and father. And I say that as an adoptive mom, because adoption is a just society's attempt to mend a wound that a child has experienced, and it's good, but it is also the exception. We should, in every way we can, encourage children to be raised by their married mother and father whenever possible, because it exempts them from some of the biggest issues kids face, from homelessness, to poverty, to abuse, to substance abuse, to teen pregnancy, to teen suicide, to high school dropout. You want social justice? You secure justice for children in the home, and you'll get social justice. But children's right to their mother and father is being threatened by marriage redefinition, something that unfortunately our platform seemed to endorse earlier this year in Milwaukee. Children's rights to their mother and father is also threatened through IVF. Because of the 90,000 children born each year through IVF, 1/3 to 2/3 lose their mother and father at the moment of conception. A third party, somebody else's egg, or somebody else's sperm, or somebody else's womb is used. Those kids, many of whose stories we catalog at them before us, often struggle with things like identity issues. Because it's very hard for kids to answer the question, who am I? If they can't answer the question, whose am I? We have to protect children's right to their mother and father. Children's family is also under threat because parents' right to their own children is being threatened, specifically by schools, who seem to answer the question, to whom do children belong, with the word us. The left seems to think that children belong to the schools, the doctors, or the community, and really what that means is the activists. That's what it means. But children have a right to their mother and father, and mothers and fathers have a right to their children, and that is being threatened, unfortunately, by the schools that we send our kids to so much of the time. It's also threatened by laws, such as in California and Minnesota, that will remove children from the homes of parents that do not consent to child sterilization and mutilation in the name of transgender treatments. So, when it comes to voting, what are we supposed to do? We vote for candidates and policies that always reinforce the parent-child relationship because there is no substitute for it. Children's minds are under attack. Children actually have a right to innocence. And this is not something that a lot of people have had to argue about in the past. But children have a right to not have innocence-violating sex ed curriculum forced on them in 4th grade. They actually need protection from pornographic library books. Kids can't defend that themselves, right? We have to do that for them. Children's minds are being victimized by a lot of the materials that we are siphoning into their worlds through curriculum. Children's minds also need to be protected by pornography. Right now, the average first age of looking at porn is the age of 12. Pornography can very easily turn into an addiction and has significant impacts on children's development, emotional, and psychological health. We have got to start standing up to big tech as it relates to porn. We have got to advance laws that require age verification so that a 10-year-old boy cannot look at more naked women before his feet hits the ground in the morning than most men have ever seen in their lifetime, okay? This is child victimization on a mass scale. So how should we vote if we want to protect children's minds? For candidates and policies that support school choice so that kids can get out of bad schools and into schools that are serious about protecting their innocence. And we need to vote people in who are talking about the harms of porn and their willingness to protect kids from it. Children's bodies are under attack. Their bodies are under attack, and Vanessa just talked about that. It is a very serious victimization that we haven't seen for, about 2,000 years, because it's not the first time we've distorted children's bodies for the sake of adult servicing ideologies. Children's bodies are being victimized. They are not being transformed from a boy to a girl. They are being transformed from a healthy boy into a boy that will be a lifelong consumer of cosmetic surgery and big pharma. That's what transgender treatments are. These children, 2/3 of whom suffer from all kinds of comorbidities, that is, other psychological disorders, depression, suicide, dissociative disorders, unresolved trauma, are now still going to have to confront those mental illnesses, but they're going to have to do it with a body that is dysfunctional. It is going to go down as one of the greatest medical scandals of our time. We have to fight against it. Children's bodies are also being threatened when their sex-segregated spaces, such as locker rooms, bathrooms, and changing rooms, are being determined who can use them based on gender ideology or gender identity rather than biology. Why is that such a risk to kids? Well, when you look at the numbers, a trans woman, that is a man who is masquerading as a woman, is 131 times more likely to commit sexual assault than an actual man, than a man who is not masquerading. And about 630 times more likely to assault that child than a real woman. There is something, and a lot of people don't like to say it, but I'm going to tell you, there is something about the cohort of men especially who adopt a transgender identity who are more likely to victimize others. And we should never put them in spaces where there are no windows and locked doors. We simply should not. So when it comes to protecting children's bodies, how should we vote? We vote for anybody that rejects the idea that anyone, adult or child, can change their gender. We simply say no. We say no. So in all of these areas, children's life, family, mind, and body, They are under attack. A lot of people would say that, well, these are political issues. Don't get involved in that. That's politics. And I would say, no. This is actually what the church has been doing for the last 2,000 years. When the church was born into the pagan world, the Roman world, children were being victimized, their life, family, mind, and body. Abortion was rampant. So was exposure. That is, allowing underweight, undesirable, disabled, or female infants, toss them into the river, onto the dumpster, allow the elements to take their course, or for those children to be ravaged by wild animals. Look what we're seeing today, abortion. And you know what else we're seeing? Exposure. I know in the VP debate, and actually in the presidential debate, that topic came up of letting kids die after a botched abortion, and somehow the fact checkers simply couldn't fact check it. But in Tim Walz's own state, we know, even though he gutted the Born Alive Protection Act, that since he's been governor, at least 8 children have been exposed, left to die after a botched abortion. So we are fighting against a lot of the same issues that the first century church came in and beat back when it comes to defending children's right to life. What about children's families? Well, when it came to sexual standards, the standard was the free man of the household could do anything he wanted with whoever he wanted. Women, children, slaves, whatever. Anything that he said was permissible was permissible. So you had rampant child victimization on a sexual level, but also that permissibility, that allowance for sexual congress to take place outside of a married mother and father created a lot of fatherless kids. The Christian world came in and said, no, sex only between a man and a woman. Don't touch the kids. And you need to have sex only with your husband or your wife. And what that did is it meant that children born to those Christian homes, at least, were always raised by their mother and father, the two people who are the most connected to, invested in, and protective of them. It meant less children were fatherless. It meant children were not being used as sexual objects. So Christianity was born into a world where simply the sexual ethic, simply the requirement of total monogamy within marriage and chastity and abstinence before marriage massively protected children. What about children's minds? Again, rampant sexualization of children. Oftentimes lewd displays happening out in public. Christians said, no, these are image bearers. They deserve protection. They actually dignified, the first century church actually dignified children to such a degree that some sociologists posit that Christianity invented childhood because they allowed kids to be kids in ways that the pagan culture didn't and wouldn't. And what about children's bodies? Children's bodies were also mutilated in the first century. It wasn't uncommon for a young boy especially to be made a eunuch so he could serve in a wealthy household or in government in ways that wouldn't threaten the leadership. Well, I'll tell you, there's an organization, a transgender advocacy group called WAPATH, and they created a new sexual identity 2 years ago. You know what it is? Eunuch. So what we're facing right now is the same thing that the church eradicated in the first century. We are seeing them all again because Christians have withdrawn to such a degree that our culture is being repaganized. Only Christianity has the answer. Only Christianity dignifies children. Only Christianity insists that their life, family, mind, and body must be protected, not just in our own personal life, but in our political decisions as well. The first century church, they didn't have the power to vote. We do. And I would encourage you to use your vote to do what Christians have always done and advance child protection. Thank you, and vote smart in November.